All right, well, welcome to the show, everyone, today. My guest is a friend of mine and an all-around genius guy when it comes to nutrition, and I thought it'd be good to have a conversation about the foundations of food. Why do we eat what we eat? What does good health look like from a nutritional standpoint? So, Jeremy, welcome to the show.
Yeah, my name is Jeremy Akers. I'm an associate professor at James Madison University in Harrisonburg, not too far away from J&L Green Farm. My role here is teach a few classes, do some research. My research really focuses on nutrition and exercise interventions for subclinical populations, really working on chronic disease, do some stuff with obesity and prediabetes and bariatric surgery population. I'm also the graduate director for the Nutrition and Physical Activity program here as well. So I'm happy to be here, Jordan. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome to have you. Wanted to start off with, when we look at the show orients more towards farms and building a sustainable and profitable business, but when we talk about the food that we're selling in nutrition in general, for your average person, average activity level and average health, what does a good diet for that person look like?
Well, I think really when you look at practices, there are so many misconceptions out about what looks good, whether I shouldn't have any carbohydrates, I should eat all fat, I should eat all protein, really should be cutting out fat. For me, and I think for most professionals, we really look at kind of the variety first of all, making sure that we have a good variety of different types of nutrients within our diet and different types of foods. We also look at balance as well. We want to make sure that the foods that we're intaking are in correct balance. And that's, there are guidelines and standards set up for what a diet should look like. But when it comes down to it, it's just about the variety and balance. And if we can get the appropriate balance, that means you're not too much, not too little. Same thing if we can get a variety, we can really make sure that an individual is getting all the nutrients, vitamins, minerals, and also the appropriate ranges for our carbohydrates, proteins, and fats in our diet.
It seems there's a lot of fad diets or niche diets that come along and they go. I don't know if anybody still does like the Beachbody diet. It seems like that had its heyday years ago, but really popular ones right now are like a Paleolithic diet or a ketogenic diet. And they seem to have good results for a lot of people. Is that as much, in your opinion, is that much a characteristic of what they're eating or what they're not eating?
Well, so I mean, for me, I'm not an elimination. My training, my education, really things should not be eliminated. So when you're doing a diet where you have to eliminate something, you're getting away from that whole balance and variety aspect. And most fad diets are eliminating something, right? And so if you look at kind of the caveman diet, the Paleolithic diet, the paleo diet, short, that's become very aggressive the past 10 years. I've actually done some research studies with the Paleolithic diet. It has good components of it. I mean, especially looking at understanding where your food comes from. So looking at the lean meats, buying them all local. So those are some of the good aspects of it. Some of the aspects that are not as user-friendly for the diet is going to be more of the elimination piece of it. It's like we're supposed to eat exactly the way our ancestors ate. How do we know how our ancestors ate? We don't really know. But things that are post-agriculture, like things that we cultivate and things that, example would be like potatoes. For me, I think that is kind of getting out, okay, let's get rid of our starchy vegetables, because we know that we eat a lot of starchy vegetables in our diet, hence potato chips, and if you consider potato chips an actual vegetable, and French fries, those are where we get a lot of our starchy vegetables. So if you're looking at that kind of stuff, that's where the paleo diet is getting rid of it. Again, everything kind of in that moderation, that balance. And then you look at like the keto diet, the ketogenic diet, one that Jordan was mentioning. That actually, it's kind of interesting to see the evolution of this diet. I've done research studies in the ketogenic diet as well, and it's really the evolution, it all went from health and weight loss, trying to lower your bad cholesterol by eliminate all the carbohydrates that you eat. In other words, eliminate all your grains, majority of your fruits, a lot of your vegetables, eliminating these, and just eating a diet that is specific on meats and proteins. So now it's like this evolution. You see a lot more athletes doing it. Now it's kind of, it's not called the Atkins diet anymore. It's actually called the keto diet. And so you see a lot of athletes now. I know LeBron James was one of the big athletes that got on this, but it's physiologically, not to get too big into physiologically, it does make sense why people lose weight. You eliminate all your storage of glucose, which glucose is stored with water in a muscle cell or your liver cell. And if you look at your muscle and liver cell, muscles 5 to 10% is stored glucose, and a liver can be up to about 25% of the liver weight. And so if you're eliminating all that, you're eliminating water, you're going to see a 15-20 pound weight loss within a matter of 2 or 3 weeks. The sustainability of this diet I don't think is great. We don't know the long-term effects. There are some research out there that says, the long-term effects are not that bad, but we also know that there are many nutrients in our fruits and vegetables and our grains that we would not be getting with a straight keto diet. So if you're having a diet where they are prescribing salt tablets, potassium tablets, chloride tablets, and a water-soluble vitamins, then it's probably not the best diet for you. If they're saying, well, you need to get some supplements for it. So, but those are really kind of the two big ones right now. There's a lot of Beachbody. There's a lot of other diets out there, but most of them revolve around some kind of elimination diet. And I think one of the things to really kind of understand with fad diets is that these best-selling books make it really easy for the consumers. They make it very attractive. They have a lot of marketing out there, and they make it really easy. You got cell phone apps, you have cookbooks, you have shopping lists, you have all this stuff. You have tear-off sheets of like, okay, this is what you need to eat. They make it really easy to follow those.
Well, it seems what's unique, or maybe the commonality between all of these is you're actually thinking about what you're eating. And rationing it out, and any time that you control yourself in such a way, you'll see results. If your norm is just to walk around and have a couple Mountain Dews every day, and in the morning when you're hungry you pick up some donuts and eat whatever's convenient to you, that tends to be a very high sugar, high salt, unhealthy diet. And if you can control it, you'll see some results. That's, I guess, one benefit of looking at these diets is that you do have to have some kind of control to it. No matter which diet you have, whether you're eliminating all carbohydrates or whether you're trying to eliminate all processed food and eliminate a lot of your starchy or vegetable or your industrialized vegetables, you have to think about it and you have to plan. And that is, one good thing about these fad diets is that, you have to think about it, you have to plan, and you have to execute. They make them attractive, like there's this miracle piece, or something is bad, or the gluten's bad, or the carbohydrates are bad, or there's one aspect that's actually bad in our diet, and they do. You're totally right that they make you think and make you plan, and which is probably a good thing. Yeah, and for everyone listening, I did the ketogenic diet for probably 6 or 7 months of last year, and have done it for stages this year. And it does have some great results if you stick to it and are disciplined, but you do have to be very disciplined about electrolyte management and hydration. And for me, one of the reasons I had to jump off of it was I had a muscle pain issue that just would not go away. Cramping at night really bad no matter how much I hydrated. You're taking so much salt, you think you're a salt truck going down the road in the winter. And so I had to roll out of it for a while.
Were you licking the salt licks on your...
I was out with the cows, and they were licking it, and I'm licking it with them. But I was thinking about what I was eating, being very intentional, pretty much a total avoidance of processed foods, which seems to be a common thread of poor diets, is eating stuff that's highly processed.
Well, I mean, interesting. There's guidelines, and again, we're talking about health, but these are guidelines specific to weight management that came out in 2013 by the American Cardiology Association and my accrediting body, which is American Dietetic Association, and some other organizations that came out and actually looked at, diets, again, fad diets that have been known to be successful at reducing weight, but also be safe. And that's kind of one of the things, if you want to do a diet, and like Jordan was talking about, is being planned, being regimented, and actually preparing your food. A ketogenic diet, if you're out on the farm,
there's no
you can't reach for a granola bar.
No spontaneous grazing.
Most of the things that we grab if we need a snack are laden with carbohydrates, and it's you probably have beef jerky. That's probably why I think you had bacon and beef jerky in there. This research article came out. A huge guideline. It was probably about 1,000 pages. But one of the sections of it was talking about diets, and pretty much they labeled about 18 diets that were safe and also have been known to reduce weight. And so that was kind of a groundbreaking article, because we always say no diets, no diets, no diets. Just kind of practice what I've been talking about. The moderation, variety, balance. But really, some of the if you look at a lot of the data for this, it's showing that no matter what you do, no matter what you eliminate, if you can reduce the amount of calories and reduce the amount of processed foods that you have, that's going to have some implications of reducing your risk for your chronic disease, and also helping reduce your weight loss. So that was a pretty groundbreaking study.
You hear a lot of talk now about healthy fats, and I remember when I was a kid, and probably when you were, everything was low fat. That was healthy. It was low fat, no fat, synthetic margarine and things like that. But now healthy fats are the rage, especially if you're in a ketogenic eating regimen. What for our listeners here who are likely engaged in grass-based production of meats or dairy, when you hear that term healthy fats, what exactly does that mean?
I mean, for me, I think all fats have health implications for them. Our body needs saturated fats. We don't need the amount that we actually intake in our diet. I mean, our saturated fat diet is usually around 18 to 20% of the calories that we intake, and that's pretty high. And then we look at, you were talking about the variety and balance. There is a lot of literature that talks about high levels of saturated fat and issues with cardiovascular disease. We know that it actually feeds any kind of inflammation that we have in our arteries that leads to like plaque formation and can lead to like stroke and heart disease. There has been a little bit more research that's kind of been leaning on, okay, maybe it's not our dietary saturated fat as much. There still needs to be a little bit more evidence, because a lot of people kind of get on the bandwagon. If something's bad, just don't eat it. And that's not what we're saying here. We're saying, okay,
chocolate ever.
Yeah, so that's kind of what people get on the bandwagon. Is like, okay, something's bad, just don't eat it, and that's not the case at all. Now we get into, we're looking at some of our polyunsaturated fats, which are omega-3s and omega-6s. Both of these are essential that our body cannot make them. Our body can make pretty much any fat. There's different types of fats that we intake and our body makes, but we cannot make these essential fatty acids, which is omega-3 and omega-6. They are instrumental in cell membrane development. We're looking at DNA synthesis and also looking at cognition within the brain, so they're super important for that. However, if you look at the ratio, like a typical American ratio, is we're really, really high on omega-6s. When we look at the ratio between omega-6, even though they're essential, we have to have them, but our ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 is roughly about 15 to 1. We would like to see that a little bit more, down to like a 5 to 1 omega-6 to omega-3. And omega-3s are the ones that are going to be a little bit more difficult, that you're getting from fattier fish. We get some from flaxseed, chia seeds, those types of things, which is not standard in a American typical diet. But even though they're essential, we know that high levels of omega-6s can actually cause some inflammation within our arteries. It can lead to that plaque formation. But we know omega-3s, the high levels of omega-3s, can actually do the opposite. They can actually be anti-inflammatories. They can actually reduce the inflammation response within our arteries and decrease the amount of plaque formation. They're just a little bit more difficult. And, I'm not, the suggestion is not going out and eating 6 ounces of salmon a day. We're looking at, trying to get, roughly 3 to 6 ounces per week of fattier fish, trying to add a little bit of flaxseed here and there. But the good thing about these is that they're fat soluble, so we can store amounts that we need.
So we don't need to go, caveman, 3 pounds of steak a day.
No, that's kind of getting more into that saturated aspect of it. And kind of talking about farmers and the farmers you're talking about, is that's one of the great things that we're kind of seeing with the chicken and beef, and especially the eggs that's being produced on, the farms like yours, Jordan, is that, we're seeing these birds and the eggs actually having higher levels of these omega-3s. So not only, obviously you're not farm raising salmon,
Well, I think they even see the differences in farm-raised salmon to wild-caught.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Anything like the farm-raised, you're going to have lower levels because it's going to be fed Twinkies and Twizzlers and that kind of stuff, right? Whatever they have, they're going to throw into the water.
A set diet, not a variety like we're talking about.
Yeah, and most of it's not going to be wild algae and wild plankton and those types of things. That's what's going to have the high levels of omega-3s in it.
Right.
But kind of looking at poultry production and looking at the eggs and the higher levels of omega-3s, a lot of that is going to be the variety of the diet of the birds, right? So the diets are all, chickens are all scraping around in cow manure, and they're actually getting not only those, the larvae, but they're also getting some of the grain and some of the plants and the manure and things that are actually growing on it. That's going to increase those omega-3 levels. That's why those birds are going to have a higher levels of omega-3s than something you're going to buy in a grocery store.
Right, and you can. One of the challenging things when selling food in particular is it's hard to see nutritional quality. Everybody knows that the BMW is a better car than something maybe less valuable by looking at them and driving them, but it's hard to see good nutrition in food. But what's interesting about eggs is almost universally you can see a good quality egg over a bad one. When you take one and crack it open, the yolk is kind of a pale, watery yellow, and it breaks as soon as it hits the pan and kind of just oozes out everywhere. We know that's a poor quality egg, but when you get one that has a firm yolk, it's kind of a bright orange, and you can almost taste the difference in those things.
Definitely, you can taste the difference. You can see it with that bright orange. That's where you're looking at that beta carotene. So you're looking at that really high levels of the vitamin A in the eggs. And then even one of the things I know when we first started getting your eggs and stuff is that when they were hard boiled, it was difficult to get the shell off. That's a good thing. If you look at the difference between free roaming chicken eggs versus something that you get at a grocery store, the shells are really easy to peel. And again, we're talking about cooking quality when we're looking at the eggs. You have that extra albumin in it, so you probably have a better amino acid profile. We don't fully know. That's the unfortunate thing, is we don't have conclusive data on every single nutritional benefits of looking more like the polyculture type of environment. We don't know everything about it, but hopefully, we got researchers that were still trying to collect that data. But having that a little bit harder to get out, and almost where the yolk kind of attaches to that membrane, that has a little bit more albumin, and that's going to help out your those cookies that we love so much.
Well, that was the we used to raise a pretty large flock of ducks on pasture and had duck eggs, and you could instantly tell the difference between confession time here, chocolate chip cookies that are made with duck eggs as opposed to chicken eggs. Is that duck egg cookie just had moisture and stuck together and fluffiness, and was a very delectable treat.
Extra albumin, that kind of almost like the embryotic sac that's around around that yolk. So it's very good. I miss your duck eggs.
Maybe someday. Justin wants to get back into them. He's trying desperately to raise money right now.
There you go. That's what you started with goats, though, right?
Yes.
He started ducks. So.
Yeah. A common question that a lot of people have to wrestle with, especially when you have a retail-oriented farm, is you operate on social media a lot. That's where you find people and they can find you. And inevitably, you get the trolls that arrive. And sometimes they come in the cloth of vegans. And they present an argument that we should not be eating meat, that it's unhealthy for us, it's unethical, or what have you. What is the health benefits of eating meat? Are humans really a creature that should only eat plants?
No, I never question anybody's dietary practices. That's one of the things that I've been trained not to do. Obviously, I have kind of my opinions, but I think to me it's really kind of understanding why the person chooses that diet. I think vegans a lot of times it could be like health practices. It could be more of the ethical treatment of animals. Me personally, and this is for me. It's very difficult. Same thing that I said. If you're just eating only meat, it's very difficult to get the variety of food and that balance if you're only eating plants. I mean, you can, and you have to be very strategic. And when I counsel individuals with that are vegans, is making sure that you are doing correct combinations of greens and legumes to make sure that you have that complete amino acid profile. But there's some things that you are high level of being deficient in, and not just like below recommendations, but being deficient in. And one of them is iron. And we know that the iron that we get in meat is 2 or 3 times more utilized in our body and being able to actually absorb it than the iron that is actually in our plant base. It doesn't mean that you can't absorb it, but you can. You just got to eat more of it. And you have to be careful with what you eat it with. And then other things that you may be below recommendations or even deficient in is things like zinc, that we get a lot of those in our meats. Things, some of our fine earth type of minerals like copper is another one. And then we're looking at some of our water-soluble vitamins. The most specific one is going to be B12. Again, I think if you are a smart consumer, being a vegan, you're not going to be deficient in them, but you just have to be very careful. And so for me, kind of looking maybe anthropologically or even like with my training, is that if you're eliminating something that is in our food stream that could make you deficient in something, then in my philosophy, you need to consume that. And so that's why you need to have fruits, you need to have vegetables, you need to have grains, you need to have meat. Those are types. You need to have animal products in general. Those are things that we need. You need to have fats. You need to have carbohydrates. These are things that we need in order to have that variety that we need for our bodies to be efficient. Again, can you eliminate things and still be fine? You can, but it's more difficult. So that's kind of my kind of theoretical piece of it, and even like physiological piece of it as well.
Seems kind of universal that balance is what we should be looking for, and we talk a lot about that with our agricultural practices that we want to avoid monospeciation, of only doing one thing. It seems to be the same with diet, that we want to avoid doing one thing. That having an element of balance in our diet and an element of balance in the ecology of our farms and with our practices, allowing for some slippage here and there for that grace. There's the day that you'll eat maybe one too many cookies, kind of thing. But it's when we start focusing on one particular point that problems start popping up.
I really agree. I mean, I think that we're geared to eat certain ways, but there are those occasional slip-ups. That's the kind of whole balance thing, right? Every day is not going to be a balance, but you don't really look. I teach people not to look day by day. I really like looking at week by week, month by month, and to make sure that you also have to enjoy life too. If you want that cookie, eat a cookie. There's nothing wrong with eating a cookie. For me, it's when that balance gets pushed to the overconsumption. The
whole package of cookies.
Yeah, and the overconsumption. Kind of like we're talking like the getting rid of something. You can tip the balance on the other scale, or the other side as well, where you have our body is not really meant to eat massive amounts of processed foods. If you're making that cookie from basic types of foods, that's okay. Have one, maybe even have two, but make sure you don't eat the whole pan and you're not, sopping up the whole,
it's not
the whole
breakfast.
bowl. Yeah, it's not breakfast, lunch, or
morning.
dinner, right? So have that balance, but also kind of enjoy yourself. And for me, it's really stuff that I like to teach is really trying to get tip the balance into more of your basic foods. And trying to get rid of the processed food aspect. And I think where I see with students and counseling, where I see is that one of the major issues is really people getting away from the basic foods. They can't pronounce anything on the food label. It may be a fruit roll-up that's supposed to be just raspberries, but then it's got like 80 different.
It's not raspberry.
80 chemicals, and really that's what they are. They're 80 chemicals. They could be from some kind of food somewhere, but it's chemically altered to make it taste like raspberry. And not that I'm picking on fruit roll-ups or anything, but that's where I get. And it's okay, if you get a little bit of it, it's okay. But like our society, that's all we eat. We can go next door and have 1,000 calories for $2. And did you actually eat any food or drink any food in that? Probably not. Most of it's like chemically altered somehow, and that's where I think the balance that's actually really leading to a lot of our chronic disease, a lot of our ailments is just the stuff that's actually in our food. That we have an amazing ability to get rid and to metabolize a lot of these materials and these chemicals. And I'm not saying, but I am saying that our body kind of looks at them as toxins, and our body can filter them, get rid of them, but at what cost and to what extent? How much can we do this? And and it's just stuff that we don't know, stuff that kind of goes in our pipeline and our food additives. I mean, we got like 8,000 things that are what's on the FDA's generally recognized as safe list, and they're up for rotation. Some of them are grandfathered in, but do we really have the data to know exactly long term and overexposure will do?
And isn't it if it's less than 2% of the constitution of something, it doesn't even have to be on the label?
Something like that. Yeah, I can't remember. No, I mean I think like as far as the new food labeling. Everything has to be on the label.
Okay.
And it's all by weight. So the first ingredient is what's in it by weight.
Right.
But if it's
it's hidden under the blanket of natural flavors.
Yeah. So natural flavors, you can just say natural flavors because all they are gases, right? The natural and artificial flavors, those are all gases chemically put together to make a piece of paper taste like a chocolate. I mean, you can easily do that with the gases, but they're so small You can just say artificially flavored or natural flavors, and you can have like 80 things, 80 gases put into that natural artificial flavor. So,
Yeah, it seems we're in a time now where you can almost drink more calories than you can eat if you're not careful. You've got your morning coffee with a bunch of creamer in it, and then you've got a soda for mid-morning, and then you've got a slushy in the afternoon, and then you've got a milkshake at night or something like that, and next thing you know, you've got 3,500 calories that you never took one bite and you just slurped it.
That's the first thing when I work with individuals for weight loss counseling. That's the first thing I do is I don't try to eliminate it all, because usually if you try to eliminate everything at one time, they'll just kind of look at you and walk out the door. But that's the first thing. One of the first things I ask is like, what do you drink that is what we call sugar sweetened beverages? And that includes coffee, it includes juice, and look at that first before I even do any kind of food records. And if I can eliminate just one of those, you got to think you eliminate, a 20-ounce soda, that's 280 calories right there. That's like an eighth of what we need a day. So
right.
You drink an eighth of that in a matter of like 10 seconds.
With
20
none
seconds.
of the vitamins or minerals or fiber
empty
or anything
calories.
else.
It's pretty much. So a good analogy is if you take a 20-ounce soda, which a Coke has about 65 grams, just open up about 12 packets of sugar and
Dump
eat
it on
it.
the table.
Yeah, dump it on the table and eat it. That's exactly what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Obviously, it's got a bunch of other chemicals in it, phosphoric acid and other flavors and chemicals and in it to make it taste good. But I mean, the amount of things the amount of calories that we consume by drinking throughout the day and not consuming the things that we need to, like specifically water. I don't, even though a soda, you may feel hydrated, but it actually takes more water to actually process everything that's in that soda than it does actually give you hydration. So,
I had to have a funeral service for my beloved Dr. Pepper a couple of years ago.
Oh.
I still go mourn at the tombstone every now and then. But well, a couple of quick questions for you here, and we'll wrap it up. Appreciate your time here with us. What's your favorite cuts of beef?
Oh, filet, hands down. I'm a filet. Even though I usually don't have enough money to buy it, but filet.
And how do you cook it?
Oh, it's got to be rare to medium rare.
Okay, still plenty of moo.
Plenty of moo. For me, and this is kind of I'm going off topic. For me, and this is one of the biggest things that I have seen by switching cuts of meat, of going to I've known Jordan for like 10 years, and really started even before I met him. But one of the biggest things that I have noticed with this production of meat is you actually taste the meat, and you can, because I don't like I don't put anything marinades or anything else. Maybe some olive oil, maybe a little bit on it, maybe a little bit of pepper, but if that cow got an onion grass, if it got in clover,
right.
The sweetness of it, and that's been, and the time of year that it was cooked, and that to me, being a food connoisseur is the cool thing about it. I don't taste all the seasoning, which the seasoning never changes, and that's right. When we look at industry, they don't want anything to change.
Right.
If you get a steak at Outback in California, you eat it here, it's going to taste exactly the same. And that's, I think, for me, that has been the coolest thing and the most beneficial, is that you actually can taste the meat and taste how the meat changes.
It is a kind of a rediscovery of what flavor.
Yeah, you got so used to tasting. Growing up and before I changed a lot of my practices, is like.
Hot dog always tasted like a hot dog.
Yeah, you got used to like what salt. Everything tastes like salt, right? And now all of a sudden, and it took a while. It took me a while to when my wife and I, and even when we were dating, we really started changing our practices and reducing our sodium intake and reducing our processed food. It took a while because like everything tasted so bland, and then all of a sudden you learn techniques, and Laura does a lot of this. With her recipes and stuff, and like how to use garlic, and how to use thyme and rosemary to actually enhance the flavors of the different cuts, where you don't have to laden it with salt, so it's not tasting like salt. So right. You actually enhance the flavor of the meat in that cut of meat. So.
Yeah. There's a it seems there's a real beauty to the taste of local out there that so many people are missing out because they like the taste of French fries or whatever their favorite indulgence is. Where they could travel to another country and they're asking for their favorite fast food restaurant. Where's that at? Never mind what the local palate here is, and that's kind of a sad state.
Yeah,
really.
But if you guys are switching, anybody listening, you switch. It's going to take you a little bit, though. It'll take you a little bit, but definitely you keep on with it. And once you make that change, to see how things change is just that's the really cool part about it.
So my last question here is a personal one, because I've read a lot of studies advocating both ways, but I will confess right now that I have a serious addiction problem. Coffee. Is it good for me, or is it going to kill me?
Well, it depends on what you put in it. If it's just coffee.
Black.
Yeah, I'm not a coffee connoisseur. I actually do not even like the smell of coffee. I know it's kind of weird, but I've never liked coffee. It's not going to kill you. If you laden it with stuff, drink the ice stuff that has like 1,000 calories in it.
Right. Sure.
That may be, but having 2-3 cups of coffee a day is not going to be detrimental. It's interesting. One of the researchers here, Chris Womack, he's done a lot of, especially with athletes, looking at coffee tolerance and caffeine tolerance, and looking at specific genes. Some people have genes that the caffeine affects them more than others, and some caffeine doesn't affect them at all.
I believe that 100%. My mom, if she has caffeinated coffee, say after 10 in the morning, or decaf after, say, 4 in the afternoon, she can't sleep.
Yeah.
Me, I could drink a tall cup of coffee right now and go to sleep in 10 minutes.
Well, it's also like a tolerance as well. We have some
probably have tolerance issues.
We have some acids, and we have some tolerance aspects as well. But yeah, coffee is not going to kill you. Again, I think especially if you're getting like the good coffee that's not processed coffee. But,
I got spoiled for several years. We had a neighbor down the road that was a retired military guy, and his passion was coffee, because that's he was in charge of, I guess, making coffee for his shop on the Navy warship. So that was 30 years of his life, and he got into roasting coffee, and you could smell it half a mile away. Oh, he's roasting his coffee, and you go down there, and if you've never had coffee from beans that were roasted 30 minutes prior, you are missing out on the good things of life. Your coffee has an oil slick on the top of it.
Oh, wow.
And it beats anything from the store, hands down.
We have my wife drinks coffee. We have a friend of ours. We were his mentor when he was in school here, and he actually works on a cruise ship in Hawaii. And he brings Elisa Kona coffee all the time from Hawaii. And so Elisa said it's like phenomenal. And then we have a faculty member here that gets coffee from Costa Rica. They said that it's like, I don't know. I'll trust her. I'll trust her without drinking it. So.
Well, it's good to hear, because I don't know if it's an addiction I would give up anyway.
I would rather see you give up Dr. Pepper than the coffee.
That's right. That's right.
You can't give up everything, right? Balance, right?
Balance. Have a cookie every now and then. Yeah. So. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me, Terry, and appreciated having you here. And we'll catch up again sometime in the future. And appreciate all you guys do for on the research side of food. We as farmers can get kind of lost in the weeds sometimes of what we do, but it's having that balanced perspective of it's producing quality food, but it's also eating them in quality ways and having balance in our diet. So thanks for being here.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Jordan.
All right.